Okay, I think we can start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, 2023 State of Mobile Communications Compliance Survey Results, presented by Shield and LeapXpert. I'm David Aronson, Product Marketing at Shield, and I'm fortunate to be joined today by Manoj Paradkar, VP of Customer Success at LeapXpert, as well as my colleague, Rieko Moody, Product Manager at Shield and former VP of Ecom Surveillance and Governance at JPMorgan Chase. You know, with Manoj calling in today from Singapore, myself sitting here in Israel, and Rieko welcoming the new day in California, I can confidently say we've got some excellent global coverage here. So welcome both of you, and thank you for joining. At the half-hour mark, we'll open up Q&A, so shoot over any questions you have in the Q&A feature. Now, I remember fondly as a teenager being on the corded phone lines with friends all day and night, but landlines have become a thing of the past. Also, the cords are shockingly all gone. So now everything we do is on our mobile phones, and business is no different. Along with our new shiny phones have popped up a new set of opportunities for market manipulation and bad actors in the financial services industry, meaning even more challenges for regulatory bodies. The SEC, FINRA, FCA, ASIC, over the last few years have all come to the table and said in no uncertain terms, all communications must be monitored, no matter the device. And we've seen what happens when an organization tries to rely on simply banning these new communication channels. What would have once been an earth-shattering dollar amount of fines has become commonplace, millions and millions of dollars for unmonitored channels and communications. So after a year or so on, we wanted to understand how much has actually changed. How are people reacting? What actions are being taken? How is the new avalanche of data being processed and surveilled? That's why Shield and LeapXpert started this survey of 200 compliance leaders in the financial services industry. Now, we'll send that over to all the attendees of the webinar at the end of the call. So now that we've set the stage, let's dig into the facts. Manoj, what's the most interesting result that you've seen here?
Well, hi, David. Hello, everyone. There are many facts. I think the top one stands out for me is actually to the point that you touched on banning and putting a policy, and organizations, lack confidence. Like 73% of the people that we surveyed said they lack confidence in banning. This is no surprise, right? So we have seen this, and it's quite simple. So changing human, behavior by policy, we have seen is not an easy one. And especially when it comes to social messaging and banning, that is even much harder, because today social messaging is part of everybody's life. So just like how we communicate each other in our personal life, it's same in the business. I think majority of the people use social messaging as a way to communicate. Just like for us, how we operate in our customer-centric, similarly, our customers, they operate as a client-centric. So for example, if an investment advisor has been contacted by a client just by using their personal phone, like WhatsApp or iMessage and the channels, it's extremely difficult for that banker to kind of decline or reject of that channel. So probably thinking about compliance at that point in time will be the last thing on their minds. They just want to reply because it's an important client. So, I think we also demand in the current world faster response. So it's more convenient. People want to get faster answers, and as soon as you have some contact and social messaging app that people are using, this is the natural human way people get on. So I think it's not very surprising. We have seen this even in the last year. I think, compliance officers' response about 73% line confidence is absolutely top one as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Thanks, Manoj. Rieko, what did you find interesting in this report?
Yeah, thank you. To me, the one that actually almost half said that they're not happy with the user adoption, it actually tells me that, we have a lot of work to do there. Thinking it takes time, right, to adapt to any changes. And, as you get older, like me, everything takes time. So when you go to foreign countries, for example, even just something like, on the left side versus like right side, small things like it's a human nature, no doubt. But I think that we also have to kind of acknowledge that there is no option, though, for us to really here, but to embrace the new policy, is in place, and you just have to really adhere. In terms of I think with the survey, kind of nuance between manager versus C-suite, I think what it actually really shows is that more senior folks, I think, understand the time required for any policy changes, right? I think it's one thing to implement and hoping that people would really follow, but another thing is that to make sure that people are actually adhering, following the new policies. So I think that they are, I want to say, a little bit more realistic, with the fact. And then I think another thing to really point out here is that it's possible that maybe people are feeling or concerned about maybe the privacy or data security. It's possible that employees are not aware that obviously the company actually had fully vetted, through the process of privacy and then, data security concerns. So it could be a matter of educations, but, hopefully that people would actually kind of, get acclimated and get used to sort of this new way of doing things, because, we also saw the other survey where more than half, 2/3 of the time, it's actually the client, especially I think on the, maybe asset manager side, that where, the actual messages are coming in from the clients and not you are the one that is actually initiating. So, there is really not much of option here. Prohibition, obviously, as we kind of talked about, is really not the answer. Then, I think we just have to kind of look at how to embrace it, how to put policies around sort of the new way of, doing of running the business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rieko. Just referring back to that, 2/3, and this was the survey found, 2/3 of initiators' conversations are actual clients. So these communication tools are no longer just like a convenience. These are our sales tools. This is how we do business. And I think both statistics that you guys pointed to, both the 73% lack of confidence that Manoj pointed to, and Rieko, you pointed to the poor adoption reliability of some of these tools. It really speaks to, are we really, do we feel confident in general about our ability to interact with customers in a way that's regulated, in a way that really brings us the ability to monitor, understand what is going on in these conversations. And the reality is, if you don't know what's going on in these conversations, then that's a big issue. I mean, it's a $2.1 billion issue, which is kind of, again, the whole purpose of this report to begin with. And looking at both of these stats, I think we see a lot of trends that and they're not always the same across North America and European compliance people. So I think one of the things that's really important to us in this report is that we got that perspective and tried to understand how different regions are looking at this issue. And that was one of the things that we touched upon. Manoj, what's your take on the survey results between North American and European respondents, just in terms of approaches and feelings?
Well, US market obviously is trending fast, and this is not surprising for us. And we have seen this trend probably started last 18 months or even 24 months to an extent. Probably it's mainly because of US regulators are much more harsher in fines and guidance, and we have seen how SEC has acted in last year and the previous year. On the other hand, Europe is it's catching up on US trend, but the results showing even much faster than what we anticipated, which is really good, right? But on the other side, it is also important to see that how this pans out between the different geographies and countries. So it's one side, it is the trend of compliance side of story, but other side, you also have to look at how people are using the channels. It's not just about is one channel or two channels. I think it is also important to see that When it comes to US, as a trend, we see iMessage and WhatsApp quite prominent. When it comes to Europe, it's much wider channels. It's multi-channel. It's not just one. So it's WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, iMessage. So we see pretty much wider, wide across. I think just to expand on that point, what I see is the globalization business is driving multi-channel kind of an approach. So it is not just about one channel. So it same applies to US and EU as well. So when you talk about social messages, it is as much as the business want to adopt it, it is more driven from the clients, their end clients. And end clients are the people, and it is more connected to the culture and the country, what it drives. So, and that's probably the reason you see the US is majority is iMessage by default. And we're seeing the huge trend about, on using iMessage, wherein, Europe is multi-channel. So I think that is where we see, the nuances between different countries or different regions. We see, I think one of our report also shows that, the multi-channel is increasing quite fast. I mean, it's not too far off, like 20 to 26% to 45% is pretty much there. So I think the regulators has to find a way to capture all of it. It's not just about one or two messages. So I think that is that's the key nuance how I see in different geography and regions, and it applies to much wider geography as well as you go and expand.
Yeah, and Manoj, I think that goes back to what we just said previously. Also, it comes down to culture, and it comes down to what people are doing. The reality is, customers are communicating. How are people communicating? I start off by talking about like, oh, I was on the phone, as a teenager on the landline with all the cords. Like that was then. How are we talking now? So different places of the world, people communicate differently. So whatever they're going to be talking on is going to be where regulators are going to be looking. So I think that's a great call out, Manoj. Rieko, can you respond to that?
Yeah, so I think that what we kind of also want to really look at is the, capturing, for the regional nuance that we sort of like talked about. But I think what we really want to also look at is also the monitoring side too, right? So, we kind of like talked about all these regional nuances. We talked about all the different capturing that we need to do. But I think one thing that we need to kind of like really look at is, what about what are we actually really doing for the monitoring? Like what type of like solution like does the company actually really have? How do you feel about, how do you feel about that like confidently? And I think it's really kind of all about addressing some of the, like different nuances. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One, obviously, people talk differently on WhatsApp versus company chats versus emails. Emails, I tend to just like really like write the whole like bio of my life. That's just like the nature of email, because you want to just give all the context, all the background, many bullet points. I think company chats can be obviously much shorter, but when I'm at work on Teams, I do give definitely a little bit more background. You're on a larger desktop, and you're just kind of firing away more stuff. Whereas on WhatsApp, with my friend, smaller screen, smaller bubbles, use a lot of acronyms, LMK, like get GSD, like a lot of those things. So I think we kind of do that. So as everyone else. So I think that you also kind of want to look at when you're just like looking at after capturing and monitoring, are you really also, capturing and catching those nuances in terms of like the way that people talk differently? And then I think another example, another one that the nuance that we want to look at is the venue hopping. We talked about all those different channels. It's possible that I'm on the phone with David at one point, and then I will, start to send something on the company chats, and then I have some related item on the email, and then I'm actually even on the side WhatsApp. Do you have a way to track and then look at all those, like say, like in timeline? Because you don't, you want to do some of the analytics, right? Like in your tool, and whether if it's internal or external, that you do want to have a view that where you can actually sort of like analyze the venue hopping. And I think another sort of one, it's not new, but I think with the recent news, emojis, like definitely you want to capture, but you also want to monitor it, right? There was like in the lawsuit in Canada that use of emoji thumbs up. It was actually something that was considered as legally binding, as part of the contract. So I think it used to be more like nice to have, let's capture emoji, but if it's actually has the meaning of the legally binding contract, you do have to monitor it to make sure how were people using those emojis, what did people say, so all those like nuances. But I think also the last thing that I really wanted to kind of touch upon is we talked about all those new channels. We talked about all the regional ones, and then it kind of covers. There are a lot of channels and, the platforms. The firm can only do so much to really anticipate what those are. But what about any of maybe the new channels the compliance was not aware of? What about when people are trying to use some of those prohibit channels, even though maybe your company actually couldn't figure out maybe, some sort of chats or like the mobile, chats that you just couldn't really capture. I think the really important thing is also to look at and then ask if you have a process to monitor those instances, right? You don't know what you don't know, but you can't say, I don't know what I don't know. I think it would actually really make a strong case with regulators that, you do have a robust process in place to, to catch and capture those instances.
Thank you, Rieko. Just a reminder to everyone, anyone with any questions, please feel free to ask them away in the Q&A. What does GSD stand for? No, I'm just kidding. But actually it's very funny. I remember my father like a few years ago asking like, wait, how does WhatsApp work? When do you send a voice message and when do you type? I'm like thinking, I don't know, we just do what you, right? So like definitely the way people behave in its behavior, the way we choose to behave across different channels, are different and there are subtleties to it. And like you said, there are risks hiding in different ways that we communicate, emojis being one of them. And I really appreciate that you brought up that Canadian court decision, because I think it really speaks to how archiving and monitoring have come a long way from just saving documents in a storage hall somewhere, and an email down in the on-prem, archive. Like it's so much more than that. I mean, we're talking about like our current way of communicating with each other has evolved so much, and some of the other approaches to surveillance just aren't sophisticated enough to, to really capture what's going on in these conversations, pun intended, I think, actually. So at the end of the day, we know regulators are now scrutinizing how firms are monitoring these conversations and what they're doing to gain insight into risks potentially hiding there. In our report, we found 64% of respondents said that their biggest concerns were regulatory audits. Rieko, what about internal systems? Aren't they there to protect firms from these kinds of fines and being worried about audits and all that?
Yeah, sure. Just to touch upon the 64% of regulatory audits, I think the second was fines, 34%. I mean, when you hear about over 2 billion fines in total, I do think it's actually impossible not to worry about those, regulatory audits and fines. So I do think that we should definitely acknowledge that. But, like you said, ideally, I think you do want to have internal strategy to avoid, those regulatory fines. Right? So there are, a lot of different classic internal controls such as, training is definitely important. You have to keep reminding people and then have to have a training. You have to have a mechanism to really show that you did the training. You're doing attestations. I'm sure you're doing that, but, frequent attestations that people are not using any prohibited channels. But, as we talked about, some of the prohibition it's really no longer good enough. So you do have to make sure that, you have some capturing process, monitoring process. So, hopefully those things will really dodge the bullet of, those regulatory audits. But I think the kind of critical practice, though, all the firms need to perform and need to do here is what we kind of call mobile assessment. You want to look at what are some of like the possible channels. You need to like really look at geographically, or you need to look at your business. What are some of the possible channels that are really actually used? What are the ones that we need to really capture? Kind of data do we need to capture? And then how do you actually also, ingest and provision? And then also, I think device is also something that comes up a lot, right? Like when we talk about these things. So you do want to look at, are you actually using the corporate device, or people still using bring your own device? Because there are different, associated risks, I think, that comes depending on the device. So, you also want to look at those. And, let's say that you are still on the, bring your own device. How are you mitigating those risks? So definitely want to do those assessments, I think, internally. But, like by now, hopefully everyone has kind of like been on top of it and have done those assessments. But if not, I believe like those are definitely like some of the steps you definitely want to take before, regulator knocks on the door. It's always better to be more proactive rather than, like waiting for someone else to visit. Whether if it's again like internally that you find some of the issue, that's great. Whether if it's internal audit or any of the internal control and risk that you have.
Thank you, Rieko. And I think that point of becoming proactive is very much the story here. We're talking about 2.1 billion reasons to become proactive and not just wait for someone to knock on your door and tell you what you're doing wrong. Manoj, would you like to respond to Rieko's answers over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important area about the regulators and how how that impacts, right? So, and also some of the key points Rieko touched on in the previous question about multi-channel, and how do you make sure that people use the approved channels, because there's always another channel that they can bypass and go. So how do you control that? And that ties back to corporate device versus bring your own device. So there are platforms today available like LeapXpert and Shield platforms, which can help customer to really kind of bring those channels as an official communication without leaving any backdoor for people to use it. So I think that's a very, very important point. And when you talk about corporate device versus the bring your own device, from the regulator point of view, I think if you have a corporate device, that addresses a lot of challenges. But we also see that regulators are now getting into individual level, not just the organization level. So a good example was I think in May, June, 2 months ago, I think FINRA fined 2 individuals, 10K, 15K, suspended, for many months for complying to some of these regulations. So I think regulators are getting stricter and much more stringent. And it is very important that organizations start to look at this much more deeper. And it is not a situation that you don't have a solution. I think you have a solution now. I think in a good place to really look at how to really bring these channels into the proper compliance fold.
Thank you. And I think that actually speaks to one of the questions that actually came through in the Q&A. When it comes to all these regulations and what's coming up next, and the regulators aren't going to tell you what's coming up next because that defeats the purpose of regulation. The question I think becomes and maybe Rieko, you can answer this first. What is the next WhatsApp? What is the next points of focus that you think regulators are going to be pointing to and saying, why aren't you need to?
Yeah. I think we actually start to hear a lot about, voice surveillance recently. I don't think the concept of voice surveillance is really not that new, but what we hear about in the voice surveillance space is the kind of like the concern of the sample reviews. I think that there are still a lot of firms that are doing some of the sample reviews because it's possible, comparing to, let's say, maybe communications, it might be a little bit trickier to capture. It might be trickier to kind of really identify those suspicious, conversions. So I do think that there are still some that are doing the sample review as opposed to, like usual sort of like 100% review, if you will. But like there are some of the concerns that are raised recently because of the kind of recent fines with the interbrokers, and they were kind of doing the exercise of like sample review of just like a picking and looking at conversations, and really didn't capture any of the kind of like conduct issues, market conduct, employee conduct that way. So I think that we actually start to hear quite a bit. And in the voice, in the same sort of the conversation, that we also hear about the transcript accuracy. It seems like it still is quite a bit of a challenge with some of the solutions, some firms, who are like already monitoring the voice. So I think that they are still really looking to see, if there are solutions that has like better, like accuracy in terms of like transcriptions. I think another one that we actually hear is like the Zoom, right? Like video calls as we are actually doing this. The question always is, do we need to capture? Is there any requirement? Are there any like sort of solutions that we can actually capture all these like Zoom or video calls? So I think that's also going to be sort of like the next one that, is going to come up. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Manoj?
Yeah, no, I agree with Rieko. I think language barriers and transcription is definitely one of the top asked from many customers. We are seeing that, and especially social messaging is bringing people together. It's removing the barriers of boundaries and languages. I think it's quite natural, area where we see that it will play a key role. And the second area where I think from my point of view, with multi-channels, and it is more at the at the cultural and a client preference, where they have a choice to to choose a channel how they want to communicate with the business. Consolidation of all these channels coming into one probably would be the next step, is what we see. I think Rieko mentioned about voice as well. We start to see the single identity is going to be the key driver in the market. So what does it mean, single identity? So if I'm the investment advisor, so I'll probably will have a one number where they can literally tell their clients that you choose how you want to contact me. You can call me on the number, you can WhatsApp me, you can iMessage me, you can Line, any channel that you choose, and you can contact me. So I think that is what we see, that how this space is going to evolve. I think solutions like LeapXpert are already deploying those kind of solutions, of course, with Shield coming in, and as a way to meet the compliance requirement end to end in a single platform. I think that is where I see the trend is going to go, and it will make compliance seems like much easier. So today, I'm not sure how many platforms they're going to go and find to make sure that it's compliant. It's all going to get consolidated into single platform. So just with one platform, they can look at all the channels. From the compliance point of view, from the employee point of view, it brings a lot of kind of ease of engaging their clients. So I think that is what I see how it's going to evolve. I think it will bring a lot more value to the business.
Yeah, I think that's some really good points both of you sharing there, and especially like the whole end-to-end part is becoming a much bigger issue. It's capture, it's archiving, it's retention policies, it's the data sovereignty, and of course, and I'll actually segue directly into the Q&A. One of the questions just came in. How do you actually monitor all this stuff? I mean, we're not just talking more, we're talking mountains and mountains and mountains more. And like we said before, it's even harder to analyze this new data coming in. So the actual question asked was, do you think generative AI may help to identify the suspicious message or messages more accurately? Rieko, do you want to speak to that? You're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, at least it was like the first time, I always get this, you're on mute all the time. Yeah, I think the answer is definitely yes. There are a lot of, I think researches that are being done right now, by I think a lot of people where if it's actually going to be accurate. And, I think you do have to kind of, again, think about what we sort of talked about with the capturing too, like a lot of what you also hear about the, data privacy, securities, those things, I think that people definitely don't need to really kind of vet through, look at it. But having said, in general, from sort of like a lot of the researches that I think that we've all seen, it is kind of like quite remarkable. And, a lot of technology should adapt that to really kind of answer some of the questions and some of the concerns that you have. Well, obviously not taking the face value of, what they said and say, yep, this is the answer, right? You don't ever want to kind of like take whatever that is being produced to say, here is the answer, or here's the result, or here's our finding. But I do think that, it is quite powerful. And, if people have never, I'm sure by now everyone had like really tried like all sorts of different things, but it is definitely quite powerful, even in, these like risk and compliance space to, I think, really leverage. So, it's a shame, like if people are not really thinking about it yet. I think that's definitely something that would come in, in our sort of the vendor space, but also within the firm itself, that I think a lot of them are actually looking at that.
Yeah, thank you, Rieko. Manoj, I think you can take this one. And so the question is, what are some of the key factors that people are looking for when selecting a mobile messaging compliance solution? I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good question, by the way. I look at, as I was replying to the earlier point. So the multi-channel support is what is top of the mind, because if you are, a business supporting your clients beyond one location, which I think most of the business are today, you have to have a multi-channel support. So there's no way you can settle it, I'm going to just deal with one. That means you're going to lose out the clients who are not really, using the other channels or the channel that you support. And then people find a way to start using that in a non-compliant way. So I think that'll be a challenge. So we see that multi-channel support is will continue to be the key factors. And we have seen this with many financial institutions that that we are seeing. On top of that, I think one of the survey we also asked question about how do you deal with the data, and there were a lot of questions about. There's a lot of findings about people are, certainly want to integrate these platforms with the CRM and other workflows and so forth. And we start to see those kind of requirements also will start to play a role in deciding these platforms, because the social messages have a lot of capabilities that you can integrate within your business. And when you integrate part of the enterprise system, so you have to make sure that this platform complies to your internal guidelines, security, GDPR, whole lot of things, security, your data leakage prevention. So there are so many aspects that you have to look at when you use this platform as a client-facing tool. So I think these are the very common use cases we see these days. I think these are the key areas what we see is the key factors where institutions are looking when they select the tools.
Thank you, Manoj. This next question, I think this is going actually also for Rieko. How do financial institutions address the challenges of data overload and actually analyze the data? I'm guessing data overload here is kind of what I was referencing before, like these like mountains of data and getting ahead of I like to call this the avalanche of data because it keeps coming. It's not going to stop. So what's the best way of doing it? And maybe this speaks to some of the things you were talking before about becoming proactive, like this. You just can't stay, in the defensive stance anymore. Anyways, but what do you think?
Oh, manually combing through one by one is what I was going to say, but
Yeah, just
I think that I was just gonna I do when I use the word AI, I think it's just the word of the day, right? Like, I think that you just can't have a conversation without like hearing the word. So any of sort of like advanced like data analytics techniques. So whether that's artificial intelligence, which is kind of like the larger pool, and whether you use like machine learning, generative AI, I do think that it's a big item where you have to also collaborate. Again, it doesn't matter whether if it's internal, you have like probably brilliant data scientists who actually is dedicated to look at all the different parts of the data. You do have to really leverage the data scientists internally. And then, maybe it's really not investing, or maybe your size wise, you don't have data science that's dedicated maybe more for the risk and compliance. They're like really looking at more of like the front desk stuff. Then you might want to again collaborate with the technology provider. But I think the key is to really address those challenges in like the smarter way, rather than looking at one by one, as we said, that it's just really not possible anymore. The data is just now becoming like larger and larger as we speak. The sheer size also, like, these like Zoom calls, the volume is massive. And then what we are actually speaking on all these, like a different forums, it's like massive. So I don't think that we can just really kind of sit back and relax and, just like hope whatever that you sort of, happen to find is good enough. I think, going back to, again, the regulators' point, they also do know that there are different mechanisms, different solutions that are now out there. So they're not going to be happy, if you say, oh, we're kind of random sampling, we're just trying our best because, we don't know, again, the unknown risk. But if you actually have a much smarter way to look at those things and be more proactive, then, I think that's really sort of like the key here.
Thank you. And I think that where there's strategy, I mean, to do what we've been doing was one strategy. You need a different strategy, whatever it is. And I think you raised all the points of what's going on right now in the industry and being used in the industry at scale. And it really is incredible what people are accomplishing. So thank you for that. I have one. Oh, here's another question just came in. Are you able to analyze the video itself, or are you just analyzing the audio transcript? Manoj, you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, there are many tools available to do the audio and video transcript. Absolutely possible, yes. So I mean, on top of that, I just want to kind of touch on just a couple of points. Rieko was talking about the data. I think audio video data also goes into that. In fact, is these are the data. While we know it is a GDPR compliant personal data, but on the other hand, there's a lot of good information and good wealth of information to look at it and learn from it and increase client engagement. And we are seeing clients start to use this data even to look back how best to engage with clients, what are the challenges they're having, where they can improve. So I think having the right tool, and I agree with Rieko, to analyze that data, whether it is generative AI or any other tools, to really stay on top of it and making use of that in a timely fashion before it's not too late, and then it just becomes another data sitting in the backyard. I think it's super important. So I think that's what I see from the data. How do you analyze data point of view?
Yeah, thank you, Manoj. And I think also like Gartner just put out a hype cycle report that actually introduced a new category called digital communications governance that was previously enterprise information archiving. And I think part of the story is exactly what we've been really talking about, and all the questions that have been coming in is archiving is just where you put the data. It's just storage. It's not really the real challenge today. The challenge today is going to be, how do you access data to be able to put it in an archive? How do you analyze that data? And I'll take one more question before we wrap up. This question here is, what is the challenge for banks? I guess the banks may encounter when they want to adopt messaging compliance platforms on top of their existing DLP policy. Anyone want to take that?
I can take. Yeah, look, I mean, the DLP policy has been existed for a very long time. Any provider coming to these spaces, you should be able to appreciate what the banks already in place, some of their DLP policies, and find a way to inherit that in the new channels. So I think that's the common trend what we see, because no banks wants to rebuild a new DLP policy just because you went with a new channel. So I think most of the product or solution does support. I think that's what we see in the trend. So I do not personally see any major challenges so far. The way we are dealing with. I mean, from the context of the question, so I kind of assume that is that a concern that banks should have when they want to adopt the existing? I think my answer should be no. So there are a lot of tools available where the new platform can just integrate with the existing DLP systems and just start using it.
Yeah, and I think there's also another side to DLP, which is more on the like MNPI leakage, like someone who's not supposed to talk to someone else, people at different list groups, and that data, being shared, whether intentionally, or not, and to be able to get insights from the data that we're already collecting, and we're already analyzing it, just to be able to get even more insights into this more and more. So yeah, I think that's a great answer there.
And some should be able to stop it, not just allowing it to go. So I think that's the capability what people look. So sorry, Rieko, go on.
No, sorry. So on the, kind of insider trading, or, kind of data leakage, especially MNPI side, I think it's true that like we are actually starting to see more in terms of like the data integration, data collaboration, right? So again, we were talking about a lot of, let's say, different data types like e-communication, voice, or iMessage, or like WhatsApp. That's one thing. But now, again, because we're talking about data, there are also kind of different ways that you can actually also look at and integrate data. So, there's a D list, let's say, in the control room that they have. There are ways to actually like kind of look at that and then look at communications. And then you can say, if there are certain sort of like deals talked about outside of like the people who should know about the deals, that gets flagged. So I think that now that, many data points exist, and because we can also integrate and combine, I think it's just really now a matter of, and I should say imagination, but matter of kind of, thought leadership to really think about what do we want to capture? What do we want to cover in terms of the risk? And then, if you actually share that, I'm sure, someone nowadays can come up with the solution. So I think it's an exciting time that we don't have to just kind of sit back and worry, what if those situations. There are different like sort of means and, the methods and solutions that could be, proactive. So I think it's just a matter of kind of the idea together, and then really, what are the sort of outcomes that you really want to see.
Thank you. I think just wrapping up, I think one of the perspectives that I kind of took after going through the survey answers and really like digging through and analyzing the data is that just, you know, we've known about the complexity of electronic communications data for some time. I mean, it's the data types are obviously, you know, all over the place. It's unstructured data by definition. So being able to even look at it and get some sort of answer out of it is obviously super challenging. But we've come a long way from just storing papers and documents, you know, in archives and storing emails. We're so much beyond it. But it's kind of like regulators and you know and internal risk teams have kind of been taking this defensive approach over the years, like after 2008, and then after, you know, also the last couple of years, trying to say, okay, well, you know, what do we do? How do we react? Okay, so let's start requiring all electronic communications to be surveilled, and let's add, you know, Dodd-Frank, and let's, you know, for supervision. Like there's all kinds of different movements and motions to try to rein in what's going on, and we've reached a tipping point. I mean, that's what all these findings were about. You can no longer just ban things that you know people are using. It's not working. Maybe in the past you're able to get away with it, but now you can't. We see that people are using it. People are communicating this way, and in fact, just pointing to the survey results, the top 3 channels that people where the respondents said that we are either currently capturing or are going to be capturing very soon, and I think like 100% of them said WhatsApp was going to be one of them. It was WhatsApp, it was iMessage, and I think SMS. And when you think about it, what do they all have in common is your phone number. They're all tied to your phones. So the way we communicate, the way we talk is not just picking up the phone, it's using our phone's core functionality, which is so much different than it used to be. So today, as we've talked about, it's much more about how do you take a proactive stance? How do you get ahead of risk? And that's why I think it was really important that, you know, Shield and LeapXpert, you know, we just naturally, you know, we're in touch with each other about the subject, you know, this whole time, and saying, hey, I think it's time that we actually get these answers and understand directly from these compliance professionals what is it that's challenging them? Why, like, are you still going to try to ban this or not? And we see the confidence just isn't there anymore. So change is coming if it hasn't yet. Change happens slow, as Rieko pointed out. Things take time. Education is a strong piece. Getting used to new technology, new realities, new challenges, new user experiences. It all comes with the territory, and we're going to get there. And a lot of people have already gone there. I'm sure, you know, Manoj, you could speak to also from LeapXpert, but Shield's talking to lots of customers about this. This is very much happening. And so just to wrap up, I just wanted to say a couple things just about LeapXpert and Shield. The LeapXpert communications platform enables, captures, and manages business communications conducted over consumer messaging applications and voice channels. It enables enterprises to achieve regulatory compliance and meet strict governance policies through its comprehensive data record keeping and unrivaled data security and control capabilities. Users benefit from choosing the right communication channel for best efficiency and client satisfaction while meeting these enterprise compliance, governance, and security needs. And I can say from the Shield's perspective, that is definitely a broad range of challenges that are very difficult to get ahead of. So LeapXpert is definitely one of one of the leaders in this, and definitely worth talking to. Just a quick word about Shield. The Shield platform is built with a modern architecture designed to deliver actionable insights about risk to stakeholders throughout your organization. It's engineered to adapt to the fast pace of technology, ensuring you're always ahead of the curve. We invite you to learn more by visiting our website or reaching out to our team of experts. Thank you, Rieko and Manoj, for this really great conversation today. It was awesome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.